Welcome to the Mobilized Leaders Podcast with me, James Chavez. I coach people to be confident and competent leaders. So let's jump into today's episode. Well, welcome to the Mobilized Leaders Podcast. I'm James Chavez, and I'm excited that you're joining me for episode number 2 as we cover an incredible topic that I think so many leaders struggle with. If you heard last week in the episode number 1 where I introduced myself and shared my passion of coaching people to be more confident and competent leaders. Because again, the confidence is important for your own development, but also for the people you lead, and the competence goes without saying. If you're not a competent leader, you're going to keep struggling and hitting your head up against that same wall, and you're not going to get the results you're hoping for, not to mention the absolute excruciating experience that you're going to bestow upon the people you're leading. They need your competence. You have to lead them strong, and you have to lead them well. So, as I shared with you, God has blessed me with decades and decades of leadership experience, both in the corporate world and in the church and nonprofit world. I've actually served in a variety of positions, from vice president of a bank to a worship pastor, executive pastor, chief of staff, lead pastor, and a coach and a consultant. And I'm passionate and excited to be able to bring this podcast to you. So if you're a leader in any capacity, you're going to get something out of this. We're going to be a community where we're building on our leadership skills, getting sharper and better together. So in episode number 2, I wanted to hit a topic that I think I've heard from so many people that I've coached and hung out with and been a part of their journey as leaders over the years, and that's one you're probably pretty familiar with. It's called Imposter Syndrome. You're familiar with that one? Imposter Syndrome. You might be suffering from that even right now. I can remember so many years ago when I first transitioned from my banking career into full-time ministry. We were actually a portable church at the time, so we rented some office space in this medical complex building. So my office was on the 3rd floor, had a great view of the city, kind of up on a hill, had some great windows in my office, which were very inspirational. So if you have an office with windows, open up the blinds, open up the shutters, make sure that you can be inspired by the world around you. That's a side note. Maybe it'd be in another episode. But I'm peering out these windows and I'm thinking, wow, now I have a brand new career path. I'm a leader in a different area. What in the world am I doing? Have you ever found yourself in that position? What am I doing? How can I even do this job? I don't know. I channeled my Jerry Seinfeld. How can I do this job? I thought, am I even prepared? I really knew a lot about banking, but what do I know about being a pastor? What do I know about being a worship pastor? What do I know about overseeing creative teams, helping this church build and grow as we're preparing for the future? And I kind of sat there for a moment just staring out these big windows saying, what have I gotten myself into? And what about all these people that are depending on me to do a great job? Imposter syndrome can get the best of any leader because there are so many expectations from outside forces and expectations we put on ourselves, right? So again, I'm sitting there wondering, what am I going to do? What's the next step? So I think the first thing to do is really understand what imposter syndrome is. It's really these expectations that you've put on yourself in most cases, not really even other people. Sometimes you may think, oh, maybe I embellished in the interview or on my resume. I saw an Instagram quote, and it was a little cartoon, and it showed a group of penguins, and then there was this black and white cat standing up all next to them saying, when you lie or embellish on your resume but get the job anyway. And so he's standing with all these penguins, but he's obviously a cat, and he's like, what am I going to do? How's this going to turn out, right? So I'm not talking about getting in way over your head, but I'm talking about when you finally get the job, you think, I can do this, and then you're there and you say, can I do this? I don't know. So really, it's an expectation you've put on yourself. You understand the role, you understand the job, and if you don't have clarity on that, that's going to be an upcoming episode that I hope you'll stay tuned and be a part of, so make sure you subscribe, because these are going to be some good nuggets that we're going to keep sharing week after week, episode after episode. So recognize that this is a common experience that so many leaders have, because at one time or another, we've all felt a little bit inadequate for the task at hand. But what you have to do is you have to acknowledge these feelings of self-doubt, you have to understand them, and then you have to realize that they don't define who you are or your competency. The thing that I want to make sure you understand that's super clear before we even move forward is you got the job for a reason. And that's important because sometimes once you're in it, you forget everything that led up to it. And you think, What am I doing here? What are my supervisors or leaders or bosses going to think about my performance or my abilities? They chose you for a reason. You have a skill set. You have something that's going to fit and contribute to the culture. And so they think that they're going to give you an opportunity, whether it's a growth opportunity or you're just dropping into a position that you hopefully can just plug and play in. Regardless of the scenario, you got it for a reason. So you got to keep remembering that. Think about what you did to get there, the skills you had that your leader decided were something valuable for them to have contributing to the team. The other thing I think is important, and you got to give yourself a little grace, is realize that nobody's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all human. Even me. Wink, wink. It's true. It doesn't matter how good you are or how hard you've worked to prepare. You're going to make mistakes. And that's just part of life. Here's the deal. I tell people that I lead all the time. We just have to fail forward. As long as we're learning from those mistakes, we're getting better as a result. I've probably learned some of my most valuable lessons from the mistakes I've made, from the failures that I've had. Yeah, we celebrate the wins, we build off the wins, but the wins feel good. They're easy. You don't really reflect and do an autopsy, peel back the layers, and really understand what you can learn from a win. The win is the win. It's those failures where you really have to stop, assess, and say, how did I get here? What led to this failure? What can I learn? What can I do better? What do I resolve to never do again? That's how we learn and move forward. But you got to give yourself that grace because it's a natural part of what's going on. The other thing that I think is critical is you have to seek out a support system. Have a mentor, have a group of friends, peers, really, that you can talk to. You got to vent upward or laterally. Don't ever vent downward. So that's another key leadership lesson that I want to make sure everybody grasps and you hang on to. Sometimes it's easy. You got a friend or somebody, especially if you've been promoted and some of your former peers are now people that you lead. It's easy to kind of connect with them. Sometimes you vent a little bit. That's not healthy. You cannot vent downward. It's not going to do your leadership any good. So find someone that you can vent to, someone that you can come to and say, I'm struggling here. What have you done to deal with this particular struggle? And find that support system. And you got to cut out any negative self-talk. Oh, I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to amount to anything. Because sometimes our thoughts and our actions follow our words. So make sure you don't fall into that trap. And embrace continuous learning. Here's the thing. If you feel ill-equipped or inadequate for a task, get better and prepare to do the task, right? I told you last episode, I decided that after this lockdown time of COVID, I wasn't just going to sit around and binge watch Netflix episodes. I was going to go back to school, and I went to Cornell, and I actually got a postgrad in business law so that I could contribute even more so in an area that I was passionate about, but I wanted to be even more equipped in. So figure it out. If you want to learn something, Google it. If you want to watch a YouTube video, find a mentor. One of the things that I've always loved to do is I'll just send an email or an instant message or something on social media. I just say, hey, man, could I buy you coffee? Hey, could we Zoom for 15 minutes? I just have 3 questions I want to ask you. Ask some of the leaders in the field that you admire, that you'd love to get a couple of minutes with, or even just, hey, could you answer one question? A lot of times they'll respond. You might not get 30 minutes of their time. You might not get all the answers, but you might get one. And that is going to be gold. But you got to reach out and better yourself. Figure out a way to learn the skills. Learn from people that are further down than you are. But don't just sit and wallow and have a pity party. If you feel ill-equipped, go out and get trained. Celebrate your successes, acknowledge the things that you're doing well, and figure out ways to build off of those and what has made you successful in that area. And then mentor others. When you're able to turn around and train, I've said for so many years, I want to keep learning and growing, a lifelong learner, because I want to learn something today, but I want to teach it to somebody else tomorrow. When you teach a skill, it solidifies it in your mind. You get sharper and you get better, but you're also pouring into other leaders to make them more confident and competent leaders, just like we're doing with this podcast. So make sure that you're stewarding that. Keeps you sharp, but it also builds up people around you. Rising tide lifts all boats. Make sure that it's not just all about you and knowledge is power and it's job security. That's a very selfish, limited mindset. It's not going to serve you well. People are going to grow around you and they're not going to help you because you didn't help them. Build this culture of assistance and building up others. Success builds up others. Mentor others. Set some realistic expectations. Don't assume that in your first 90 days of a new leadership role, you're going to take on the world and you're going to change everything. You might, but you probably won't. We have great dreams, and it's good to dream, but then I've always said, another kind of funny adage, how do you eat an elephant, right? You've heard that. One bite at a time. It seems overwhelming and it seems huge, but you got to take it a chunk at a time. I say backwards plan. What's the end goal? And then just kind of backwards plan. Well, what would I need and what timeline, what resources and what people do I need to accomplish said task? And then set realistic goals. Whether I was in the banking world and we had to have so many mortgages and loans and deposits on hand, I would just break it down. Well, how many do we need to have daily to meet a monthly goal? Well, how many do we need per person daily to meet that goal? Great. Well, let's set it and set a stretch goal. So every day you're moving a little bit further towards your goal. You're not waiting till the end of the month and then saying, did we meet the goal? Then it's too late to figure out if you can course correct and you can salvage anything if you're short. You actually can set daily goals for yourself in a task, but make sure that they're realistic. Take some risks. Embrace risk and challenge. I'm very moderate and conservative when it comes to risk. I like success. I hate losing. So some might call me risk adverse, but I've used that to be a strength. What I do is I get all the data I can. I talk to all the people I can. I gather all the information that I can so that I'm as equipped for the highest probability of success when I do take a risk. So I'm not the type that says ready, fire, then aim. It's ready, aim, then fire, right? For those of you not following that analogy. I don't want to decide halfway down from the airplane if I have a parachute on my back. I want to plan, I want to gather the data, and then I want to take the risk because I want to win. But you do have to take risks to win, and that's the point that I've had to build and get better in my leadership is not being as risk adverse. So some of you, that's not an issue, and you take risks all the time. If you're very entrepreneurial in your leadership, you're used to taking risks, and that's great. Continue to take risks, just be measured and make sure that you're succeeding. It's not the shotgun approach, just spatter whatever you can, or throwing spaghetti against the wall is another, and just seeing what sticks, right? No, be strategic in your risk taking so that you can bring others along. When it's this real kind of shoddy and everybody's always kind of wondering what kind of risk you're going to take, you're not going to have very many people on your team that can stick with you because not everybody has that strong ability to weather risk. There are a lot of risk-adverse people, especially when it comes to people that you're going to lead. So that's another big one. Take risks, but be measured and do it the right way. And look at the unique perspective that you bring to what is ahead of you. So we may all at some point have felt like we're inadequate. You may feel like, my goodness, if they knew the thoughts going on in my head, they would not have hired me for this role. I would not have this leadership position. That may or may not be true, but you got to stop and think, why did they give me this opportunity? What can I contribute? How can I win? What do I need to do daily to get better and prepared to meet the goals and expectations? So keep growing, keep learning. Whatever you learn today, teach it to someone tomorrow. Make sure you're in a support group where you can express your challenges, get some best practices, and you can maybe encourage someone else along the way. That's how we break this cycle of imposter syndrome. So when you feel ill-equipped, you can actually continue to move past it and you're not paralyzed by the fear or the paralysis of analysis. How am I going to get out of this mess that I found myself in? You can move forward confidently in your leadership and you're building competency along the way. Hey, I hope this helps. And as I told you, I want to stay connected with you. So follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. It's A. James Chavez at all of those social media platforms. And make sure you subscribe. Follow this wherever you can. It's on YouTube. And again, the Mobilized Leaders podcast on YouTube and on Spotify, on SoundCloud, on Amazon Music, on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, on Jetson, on Vixen, on Donner. It's on all the platforms. But find where you are, but hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me, and I would love as many leaders to come around as we continue this journey together, as we make each other better and stronger. So keep tuning in. I look forward to our next episode of the Mobilized Leaders podcast as we continue to grow and make each other better and stronger. Until then, put some of this into practice, and I'll talk to you soon. I hope you were encouraged and challenged by today's podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our Mobilized YouTube page and follow me on social media at A. James Chavez on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and James Chavez on Facebook. For more information and ways to connect, visit our website at mobilized.life.